Brian Lehrer on WNYC at 11:45. Quick mention of what's coming up in 15 minutes, which is all of it with Allison Stewart. Allison will have Pulitzer Prize-winning photojournalist Lindsay Addario, who has covered every major conflict of her generation. Now a new documentary follows her as she tries to find a balance between her dangerous work life and her family. That and more coming up at noon on all of it here on WNYC. Now, New York City voters have spoken, and they said yes. All three of the housing-related ballot questions, Propositions 2, 3, and 4, were approved on Election Day. Together, they will change parts of the city's land use process in ways supporters say will make it easier to build affordable housing, and critics said could leave local communities with less of a voice. The measures will speed up approvals for certain affordable and mixed income projects, especially in neighborhoods that have added the least housing in recent years. They'll also create a new appeals board that can overturn city council land use decisions, one of the most debated changes on the ballot, moving power away from city council on this. So New York is officially a city of yes. Yes on all three of those proposals to change the city charter. But what actually happens now with these faster track development rules, and for the new mayor, who will have the opportunity and the responsibility to carry them out well? Joining us is Amit Singh Bagga, who is a key supporter of these proposals as campaign director for the Yes on Affordable Housing PAC. He is also a Democratic Party strategist. Amit, hi. Welcome back to WNYC.
Thank you so much, Brian. Just a quick point. I've been waiting to come on your show since I was 14 years old, so this is a real privilege.
So great to have you. And, listeners, to be clear, we're no longer debating these because they passed. So we're going to talk about implementing them with this advocate, and we can take your questions. 212-433, WNYC 433-9692. Let's go right to Proposition 2. It lets certain affordable projects move forward without city council approval in districts that have built the least housing in recent years, but it doesn't name those districts. So how quickly do you think we'll start naming the names of what neighborhoods and having things implemented there in a different way?
Well, thank you, Brian. It's no surprise that these proposals passed and passed pretty overwhelmingly, because I think New Yorkers from the Bronx to Brooklyn know that our housing crisis has been a house on fire. People simply cannot afford the roofs over their heads. Fully 50% of renters and homeowners are cost burdened, meaning they're spending more than 30% of their monthly income on rent. And everybody knows that the rent is too damn high. So we know that there is broad support to fix our broken housing approval system. Specifically with respect to Proposal 2, it fast-tracks two types of housing. The first is 100% city-financed affordable housing. So this is where a project is developing housing where 100% of the units are financed by the city in some way. Sometimes there are state and federal subsidies as well. These are the types of developments where you often see the most affordable housing produced, meaning the depth of affordability is as much as the city can generate. So sometimes going as low as 30% area median income. So if you're a household of three, you could be making $43,000 a year to qualify for a unit in one of these buildings. If you're a single person, that could be $34,000, which is essentially the equivalent of an annual income of minimum wage. So this is really designed to meet the needs of the lowest income New Yorkers. The second element of Proposal 2, as you mentioned, would fast track developments that are 25% affordable or more in the 12 community districts that have built the least amount of housing. So we actually already know which community districts these are. They are largely in the sort of outer reaches of the city. The New York Housing Conference just released their latest annual housing tracker, which they release every single year. They have broken down housing production by council district. And what we see is that there are many districts across Eastern Queens, Southern Brooklyn, Staten Island, that have basically produced no housing in the last 10 years. The districts that have produced the most include districts in the South and West and Central Bronx, which have produced over 8,000 units of housing in 10 years. The least producing districts have approved fewer than 100 units in that same period of time. And so really what Proposal 2 is about is addressing this housing construction disparity. Our housing crisis is a citywide problem, as I think all of your listeners will agree, and that demands a citywide solution. And the challenge that we've had under our current system is that far too often, a small group of neighbors can weaponize the existing housing approvals process to block housing where we so desperately need it, which has resulted in a smaller number of districts taking on the task of building housing.
I want to go on to Proposition 4, the new appeals board, which was maybe the most controversial of the three, Prop 4. Council member Lincoln Ressler, progressive member of council, was on the show just before the election and said he could back numbers 2 and 3, but warned that number 4 could weaken the council's leverage to secure, not NIMBY, he was arguing, but deeper affordability, family-sized units, and neighborhood improvements. So what's your response to that concern, and how do you think communities can use what leverage they have left under whatever the new rules are to influence what kinds of development take place in their communities?
So let's talk about what Proposal 4 does and also what it doesn't do. Proposal 4 does not take any power away from the council to negotiate the best deal they possibly can in good faith on behalf of their constituents. This includes things like the concessions and investments that Lincoln, who, by the way, is a personal friend and longtime colleague, talked about when he appeared on your show. And when it comes to larger land use projects or rezonings, all of that still has to go through the council. What Proposal 4 is really designed to be is a scalpel, not a hammer. So in the rare instances where a larger land use project or a rezoning actually fails at the council level, and it included a significant amount of affordable housing, the appeals board can potentially reinstate that affordable housing, which had already been approved by the Department of City Planning. And functionally, what this really does is just add the borough president to the list of stakeholders with whom a developer and a community have to negotiate. If you can get the borough president on board as part of the process at the council level, by the way, community board review is fully included in this, then you can get a deal done. And what this essentially does is change the incentive structure. As I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, our current system allows small groups of neighbors to often block housing in many parts of the city because they essentially force individual council members into what I think is a Hobbes choice: block housing or lose your seat. We saw this most recently with Marjorie Velasquez in the Bronx a couple of years ago. She came around and demonstrated courage and leadership on getting the Bruckner Boulevard rezoning done, which included many affordable housing elements, and she lost her seat as a result, and that too to a Republican. By the way, that result was very different just a couple of nights ago. And so really what we're doing here is we're saying, let's change the incentive structure so that the goal is really to produce as much housing as possible while extracting concessions from developers. And let's remember, it's only corporate landlords and developers that benefit from the current status quo of very, very high rents. The city doesn't benefit from that. The lowest income New Yorkers don't benefit from that. And so really what we're doing here is kind of loosening the vice grip that our system has currently placed on housing production.
Let's take a call from Alex in Brooklyn, who I think voted no on number 4. Alex, you're on WNYC. Hi. What's your question for our guest?
Hi, Brian. How are you? I actually voted yes on 4, but no on 2 and 3.
Sorry.
That's okay. But my question is about those first 2. And one of the concerns that I had and that I had seen raised is that expediting timelines for approvals might lead to less oversight of developers or which developers would receive these contracts. And so developers with poor track records or who might, be doing things to cut corners, to get the bids, there will be less of an oversight through an expedited process. So that was my concern. And I'm just wondering if your guest has a reply.
Yeah, and I'll just throw in that we have another caller from the Upper West Side, also about Prop 3, saying any kind of housing could sail through, and luxury housing might have the same easy fast track as affordable housing under this Prop 3 that passed. So what do you say to those 2 callers?
Sure, both great questions. So on Prop 2, the way in which Prop 2 will function is not that it's actually cutting out a whole bunch of review. It does cut out the city council, but any proposal still has to go through the City Planning Commission, Housing Preservation and Development, the Department of City Planning. There are multiple city agencies that are still involved in very rigorous oversight. What Proposal 2 really does is collapses the timeline of that oversight to be essentially all of the oversight is taking place kind of at the same time as opposed to consecutively. And so on paper, what is currently a minimum of a 9-month process becomes 90 days. But with the exception of the city council being removed from that review, all of the other reviews that are currently required are maintained. And let's remember that we used to have actually a cottage industry of affordable housing developers in New York. Obviously, there are still some, but there are not as many as they used to be. And part of the reason for that is because the amount of time and the amount of money that is required to go through the current process or the process as it has been is often several years and several $million, even to produce affordable housing. And so that has resulted in a situation where it's really only corporate landlords and developers that have the resources to build housing. And let's be honest, they're only interested in building luxury housing. And so part of what this system is designed to change is that incentive structure as well.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, we have about 2 minutes left, and there's one question that I really want to ask you, which is that Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani will be the first to govern under these new rules. In fact, we had a couple of callers on Election Day who said they voted yes on the housing proposals specifically because they trust Mamdani to use them well. So how do you expect his administration to use or to be tested by these new powers? As an advocate for these now that they passed, what's your message to Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani? Do what?
Well, I have full faith and confidence that Mayor-elect Mamdani is going to have on his housing team the brightest and best policy minds and those who have been thinking about this issue as critically and creatively as possible for a long time. And I think he is going to bring to the table really important community organizations like DRUM and CAV and New York Communities for Change, Churches United for Fair Housing, Make the Road, and others to the table in a credible way to have a conversation about what the community's needs really are and how we can leverage the new tools in our toolbox to meet those needs. And bridging that gap is something that mayors have tried to do. Certainly, as an alum of the Bill de Blasio administration of 2 terms, I can tell you that was a priority for him. But because these tools did not exist, it was very difficult to have that conversation. And so people who we call housers, who are sort of housing experts, have come up with a lot of potentially very good solutions to our affordable housing problem, but have not necessarily been able to co-create some of those solutions with community groups. These tools give us the opportunity to do that. Mayor-elect Mamdani's specific approach to governing, I think, is going to give us a unique opportunity to do that as well.
All right. And we will obviously be following the rollout of these new rules and opportunities when the mayor comes on the show, as well as in other ways. And so for today, we thank Amit Singh Bagga, campaign director for the Yes on Affordable Housing Pact and a Democratic strategist. Thanks for explaining what happens next. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Brian.
And that's the Brian Lehrer Show for today, produced by Mary Croak, Lisa Allison, Amina Cerna, Carl Boisrond, and Esperanza Rosenbaum. Zach Goddard-Cohen produces our Daily Politics podcast. We have interns this term, Amanda De Jesus and Miranda Santos, and we had Juliana Fonda and Amber Bruce at the audio controls. Thanks for listening today, everybody. Stay tuned for all of it.